Good morning, my fellow Canadians. Well, big doings in the US, eh? It's sad to see what happened to that nation. It's going to be a mess. I know there are the people out there saying, wait, it's not over yet. Before the 20th, the military, there's going to be a coup. This was all done to expose the swamp in the United States, to expose the loony left and get them out of the shadows so that they can all be rounded up and arrested. The optimist in me says, oh God, if only this were so. But the cynic in me says, it's wishful thinking. My honest opinion, we've got 4 years of disaster looming for the United States. The same kind of garbage we have here in Canada is coming to them. The loony left has taken control of a country, just like they have here. Was there voter fraud? I think that's not open for debate. Was it as widespread as they say? I wasn't there. I don't know for a fact. But it doesn't pass the smell test. That Biden would defeat Trump, I don't know. Like I said, to me, it does not pass the smell test. And the real tragedy is, of course, everybody with a brain knows if Biden is inaugurated as the next president, I give it 6 months before he has a health crisis of some sort, and Camel Toe Harris then steps up and assumes the presidency, and in which case the US is screwed. I've gone on before. One of the absolute sacred cornerstones of a free society is a fair and open election. The right to vote and the knowledge that your vote matters. Anybody, for whatever reason, who would pervert that process, attempt to circumvent the will of the people, and sacrifice the democratic principles on the altar of their ideology, is my enemy. Because that is the road to tyranny. The smug self-righteousness of the left. I mentioned before, I've come across the term, I can't ascribe the originator, but it was the tyranny of the self-righteous. Historically, we have seen this time and time and time again. We've seen those from the standpoint of their ideology are prepared to do the most horrible things and justify it on the standpoint of their ideology. Good Germans, moral people, who rounded up political dissidents, religious dissidents, rounded up the Jews, sent them to the horrors of the concentration camps, and did these things from a standpoint of the moral high ground, they thought. The October Revolution that brought communism, that brought the USSR into being. These cadres went out there, outside of the fact of the war between the Reds and the Whites. Ignore that part. The rounding up of intelligentsia, clergy, political leaders, dissidents, the gulags, the executions, arbitrary executions, the starvation of the Ukrainians who resisted collectivization, and the people from the belief in their morality and the belief in their ideology were prepared to see women, children starving, round up and execute men, murder children for attempting to steal food because they're starving. But this was done in the great cause. So they suspended morality, suspended ethics for this great cause. And this is what the loony left has done here in Canada and is now doing in the United States. We are doing this for the greater good. We have determined that this is going to be a better course going forward. So yes, we're doing some things that might, in hindsight, seem morally reprehensible, but we're doing this for good reasons. And that moral justification in their minds, I've seen it in a small way. The people who were morally justified in slugging a 70-year-old man in the head with a brick, Antifa, because they disagreed with his politics. Slugging a 70-year-old man in the head with a brick because they didn't like his politics. I was going to say, what kind of morality do you have that would justify that? But you can't say that, because what is obvious is a total lack of morality, that anybody could do that. An old lady and her husband, an old lady in a walker, and the radical loony left standing there in front of them, impeding their path. You don't have the right to go and listen to someone whose viewpoint perhaps matches yours, or at least listen to what they have to say. You don't have the right to do that. Shutting down free speech under the claim that it is incitement to violence, and yet when it is the left inciting violence, when they were urging on BLM, urging on Antifa, it was just mostly peaceful protests. Never mind the rapes, the murders, never mind the disaster, the destruction of private property, the damage to individual businesses, the blackmail, the extortion, everything that went on. No, never mind that. This was for a greater and nobler purpose, you see. So yeah, you break a few eggs, but we're trying to make an omelet. To me, I guess from a standpoint of years, theory versus reality. I've gone on and on and on about this. Social theory, theorists, we believe that, we feel that, we think that. Let's try this. It's a noble experiment. Let's try this. You need pragmatists. You need people to sit there and say, okay, not a bad idea, but let's think it through from A to Z. Think through all the ramifications of your opinions. Think through all the ramifications, all the potential side roads of your ideals and idealism. Let's look at the whole picture. But this critical thinking is what the loony left is totally bereft of, the ability to exercise critical thinking, to see things through, because they don't have the pragmatic grounding to realize the full effects, the ripple effects of what they're doing. Yeah, it's a stone in a pond, but those ripples carry on into areas where they did not see. They see the stone hit the pond. Where are the ripples going to go? I don't know. And they don't care until things go for a shit. And then all of a sudden it's, we didn't think this would happen. Oh, we didn't condone this. Dan Bongino does a good thing. They came for Twitter, shut down Parler, Amazon or Apple deleted the app, claiming they incite to violence. And yet, their disclaimer is right there. They do not. They wanted a free and fair forum, and they're deleting free and fair forums, unless it supports their leftist contentions. They claim the Capitol Hill protest and the violence that resulted in that. They've jumped on that as the justification. And yet there is very strong evidence that the so-called right-wing protesters, they were infiltrated by the loony left, who radicalized, practiced violence so that the right takes the hit. Was this orchestrated or just happy circumstance? I don't know. I can't say yes, I can't say no. But I will say that I've seen time and time again, we've seen, for the sake of their ideological position, we've seen the left willing to engineer events because of the optics and the narrative. And this is nothing new historically. The Germans did it to invade Poland. Anybody who knows their history knows that they took German prisoners, dressed them in Polish uniforms, attacked a German radio station, laid out the bodies of these people they murdered, and said, see, the Poles attacked us first. We were justified in invading Poland. They created a false narrative and acted on that narrative. And the German people were saying, we're justified because the Poles attacked us. The other really sad thing with these loony lefties and taking control is they don't realize the true believers, your heads are on the chopping block. When things start to deteriorate, and if Harris and Biden take control of the US, if the Democrats take control, which it seems like they might, of the entire governmental system, the mess that's in California will be nationwide in the United States. The mess that's in New York will be nationwide in the United States. And it will explode into violence. And people are going to die. They've engineered another civil war. Oh, not initially. Initially, people's lives will carry on much the same until the policies start impacting them. You won't see discernible differences right away. But policies will start impacting them, impacting their quality of life, impacting their finances. And people are going to start to wake up and say, hey, what's going on here? And as information gets out, you're going to see it polarized even further. That division, where a lot of, I'm a centrist, but to the left, I'm right wing. I'm not right wing. I'm a centrist. I see both sides of the issue. But I weigh the issues based on knowledge, based on fact, based on reason, based on research. I weigh all the factors before I adopt a position. I don't listen to one narrative. This is what we are supposed to do. But how can we? When you have a mainstream media that feeds one narrative, they're all on board with the same narrative, and people with their belief in the press still following mainstream media and accepting what they are fed as so. It's at the stage where nothing in any of the mainstream papers, other than, like I've said before, the Toronto Sun, have I seen anything resembling balanced reporting? Have I seen fact? Have I seen journalistic ethics on display? So the social media is the only circumvention that you have for the mainstream media narrative. So Freebird Media, Rebel Media, Red Pill, Dan Bongino Show, Tucker Carlson, Fox News in the US. And they present a truly balanced viewpoint. But you can't be balanced anymore, because as soon as you disagree with the position adopted by the left, you're the enemy. Now, individually, one-on-one, sometimes you can actually have a dialogue with them and bring up facts and figures perhaps that they didn't know, they were unaware of. They based their position on propaganda and on carefully crafted narrative and spoon-fed to them. And they are doing what they think is morally right, insofar as the knowledge that they have, but they don't have the big picture. You cannot look at one side of an issue and take a position based on one side of an issue. A mature and intelligent person will do their research, look at both sides of an issue, and then adopt a position that supports their morality, their ethics, their viewpoint. They will take a position based on these things. They should, not what I'm told. Which brings me to one thing that I'm terrified with the deterioration that is coming for the United States. That is going to impact Canada. A lot of Canadians don't realize this. Now, that's the United States. Our biggest trading partner, our next door neighbor, the longest undefended border in the world. What happens in the United States is going to affect us here. We have the de facto dictatorship of Trudeau and the Liberals. Now, with the proven fact that mail-in ballots are subject to tampering, the voting machines are subject to tampering. These things, it's pretty much an established fact that the left violated the sanctity of the free vote to install their candidate. I don't think any reasoning person can doubt that the election was tampered with. So what does Trudeau talk about? We should look at mail-in ballots and voting machines. And his attitude being, I mean, there's not even any subtlety to this. The left stole an election. The left stole a country. Hey, there's an idea. Why don't we do exactly what they did? Seriously? And average Canadians, they go, oh, okay. The promise of electoral reform, where'd that go? To me, it's very simple. The enumerators go around, they find out who lives where, and you get a voting card in the mail. You show up at the polling station. The hours are flexible enough that there is almost no set of circumstances I can conceive of, either in shift work or whatever, that you can't take the 5-10 minutes to show up at your local polling station and cast your ballot. They have early voting, and then they have the primary voting. It's almost impossible. I cannot personally foresee a circumstance in my life as a working man where I could not have made it to the polling station for the hours of operation and for the times that they brought that people could go and cast their ballots. And to me, that is the only thing. I lost my voting card. Sorry, you can't vote. My wife threw up my voting card. You don't vote. I have a friend who will attest that I live in the building. The left actually published on social media, here's how you can circumvent. Here's how you can cast more than one ballot. Here's how we can circumvent the system to allow our supporters to go to different polling stations and cast more than one ballot for our preferred candidates. Now, I don't know if they ever did a count how many ballots were cast versus how many voters were in a particular riding. I don't know if they ever did that. There are, if the numbers are accurate, more ballots were cast when they look at Trump's votes and Biden's votes. More ballots were cast overall in the election than there were eligible voters. Is this true? I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see the results. You can write anything. You can twist numbers, skew them. I would not be surprised. Again, the tyranny of the self-righteous. We're doing this for a great and noble purpose because we believe our ideology is correct. So screw the people what they think. They don't understand. We are the woke. We are the aware. We are the future. We saw it happen in the Soviet Union. Particularly is the best example I ever saw, where the true believers in the purges, those were the ones who got chopped. Because when they realized that this idealistic vision of this new world that they were going to create was being perverted, power was seized by those who love power. The atrocities, the horrors that were committed when they lost the illusion of blindness and the blinkers came off. They became enemies of the state and they were purged. I don't know, people. I really don't. We need a strong conservative party to step up, to get vocal, to get active, to save this country, or we're going to turn into the same freaking swamp that the US is going to turn into with 4 years of democratic rule. So wake up, people. If you want to save this country, you better get active and you better take off the blinders. You better open your eyes and see that Canada, as Canada, is dying. And if you don't get active in helping it, then you're part of the problem. Thank you. Have a good day.